Jason from Ventec Industries, and today we are going to mix up a bucket of Smoke-Tite. Smoke-Tite comes in a 3.5 gallon bucket, 25 pounds. It's a dry material. Being a dry material means it has no shelf life, so you can store this as long as you want, and it's not going to go bad. And a bucket covers about 10 square feet at 1/2 inch thick. So there's enough material in this bucket to do an average size smoke chamber. One thing about these buckets is that we ask that you mix the whole bucket, the complete bucket. We don't do this to try to sell you more material. The reason why we say this is that it is a dry material, so when we ship it, some of the heavier particles of the material like to settle on the bottom. So to get this completely mixed dry, it's hard for you to do that on site. So we ask you to use the complete bucket so you don't have too much of one particle and of another particle. So please mix the complete bucket and use the complete bucket. Things you need to mix this is a bucket of Smoke-Tite, a clean bucket to mix in. Make sure there's no chunks in it. It's a clean bucket. And cool, clean water. When we say cool water, it should be ground temperature water. The reason for this is if you use warm water, it can cause the material to actually flash set. Okay, so you want to use cool ground temperature water and clean water. You also need some sort of device to measure out the water. We use a 4-cup measuring cup, which works really well for us. And you also need some sort of mixing paddle and a 1/2 inch drill to run that mixing paddle. We like to use this mixing paddle. We've used a bunch of different ones. We find that this one works the best as far as agitating the material. And also we found that other types of mixers, like the paddle one, they have a tendency to tear up the inside of the buckets and make little shreds, and these shreds get clogged in the system. So we found that this one works really well to agitate it, plus it has rounded edges on it, so it doesn't cut up the bucket. So we found this one to work the best. So we suggest using this one. You can get this one at any Home Depot, Lowe's. It's a pretty common mixer. Okay. And as far as mixing the material goes, all the mixing instructions are printed on every bucket, so you can always reference that when mixing the material. Okay. So like I said, when you get the material, it's dry and it likes to settle. So what we like to do first is kind of just give it a little bit of a dry mix to kind of fluff up the material. Makes it a little bit easier to pour. Okay, these buckets have a tab, the tab, and the lid snaps right off. This is what the dry material looks like. Okay. So, the water. So the big thing with this material is that you always want to add dry material to the water. You can't take the water and add it just directly to the dry material. It won't mix up right like that. It kind of clumps up. It doesn't get mixed right in the corner. So you always want to start with the water, add the dry material to the water. So with our 4-cup measuring cup, the amount of water is 1 gallon and 3/4. So we actually need 7 of these, 7 4-cups, which makes 1 gallon and 3/4 of water. So that's 1 3/4 gallons of clean, cool, ground temperature water. Okay? When mixing the material, always make sure that you wear some sort of respiratory device or mask. And some sort of eye protection. So at this point, you're going to add about 3/4 of the bucket of dry material to the water. So that's about 3/4 of the bucket of dry material. Take your mixer and go ahead and give it a mix. Okay, so at this point the material is going to be really wet. So you want to add the rest of the dry material. And then you want to mix this for about 3 minutes. So that's the initial mixing of the material. So at this point, you have to wait 15 minutes for the material to kind of take its initial set. Mixing it every 3 minutes in that 15-minute period. What happens here is the material, like I said, takes an initial set. After that 15 minutes and you do the final mixing, the material is very stable. And you can work with it for about an hour before it sets up. You just want to try to keep a cover on it so that nothing falls into the bucket or the direct sunlight's setting it up at all. So you have about an hour after that 15-minute set. So now we'll wait 15 minutes and mix it every 3 minutes, and then we'll be all set.